Right, evening all. International break done. We're all back. We've remembered that we like this game, I think. But I'm very fortunate. I'm joined by two managers who are on hot chips this evening. Jossy, long time no see. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. Actually flew in last night at 1:30 a.m. from a stag do in Hamburg, so I've just had 3 days of copious alcohol, not enough sleep, and so you've got a fresh, rested, and eager to talk about my chips.
There you go. No, yeah, we're expecting a lot. You've got it absolutely down for anyone on free hit this week. So Jossy's here to give all the best advice, so that Danny and I are not culpable for anything legally. Jossy is the man to blame if it all goes wrong. Danny, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. I was just thinking about how Jossy just said like he feels better already. I don't know if he's lying, but I love that, and I kind of envy that. I mean, if I'd been on a 3-day. He's obviously one of those people who just recovers. Like, I don't care how rough you were this morning. If I was on a 3-day stag do, it would take me about 3 days to feel better and want to even remotely consider doing a pod. So, pretty impressive. But yeah, no, I'm good. It feels like I can't believe how long this has been because I was away last week, wasn't I? I was sharing my tapas and beer pictures in Malaga, and it just seems like ages ago. So yeah, it's nice to be.
No, we have had requests from some of our viewers for you and I to do a kind of a food pod. So I was kind of thinking no one else will remember what this is. In fact, if anyone in the chat does remember what I'm talking about here, then you're more cultured than 95%. But there is a. Do you remember there were about sort of 10, 15 years ago, there was an art historian called Andrew Graham Dixon who went round Italy with a chef friend of his, and they'd stop, have a look at a couple of paintings, and then the other guy would cook lunch, and it was just a really kind of cultured, lovely. You'd absolutely love it actually because it's obviously very sort of. It's like Rick Stein's art. Yeah.
Oh, it's absolute heaven. I thought you were going to say it first before you said that. I thought you were going to say that we've had a few requests for you and I to go on holiday together, and I was thinking, all right, vlog it all, and I was already seeing images of me and you walking down the beach, but no,
hand in hand.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if the regular viewers and listeners want to fund us going on holiday, we would be absolutely delighted with that. So, share your coin. I don't know how, but that would be absolutely lovely. I'm tempted to get an early kind of like and subscribe in today. With that kind of thing. Please do share it everywhere. Hit those buttons. But yeah, so you were in Malaga. Where was your stag, Jossy? I can't remember whether you said Hamburg.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going there soon actually, so I need to get you some tips.
Really?
Yeah, it's a work.
I mean,
I
was going to say you maybe go for a slightly different vibe, but it's a nice city. Laid back. What we saw.
It probably won't shock either of you to know that I've never been on a 3-day foreign stag. That might not shock anyone. Why would you invite me? But anyway, on that level, I do have an old favourite with us this evening. The organic apricot beer is back, so that's what I've got this evening. So we should be in good spirits, I think, as well. Anything else happening over the international break, or did you catch much football? Did you watch England? Did you do any of those kind of things before we kind of kick off with all the sensible subject matter?
Well, I was really annoyed actually because sorry, Jossy. I was just going to say because I was away for the first week. I've made a real point this season that I want to watch Match of the Day every week, and I like to watch Match of the Day and get the highlights. I know I can watch the highlights on YouTube, but it's not quite the same thing. Although it's fine, but I didn't know. Well, I should have known. But Match of the Day just deletes off bloody iPlayer after a week. So
wow.
So the Saturday Match of the Day, by the time I went to watch it on Sunday, it had gone, and I watched a little bit of the Sunday one, and on Monday morning the Sunday one had gone. So I've sort of I know it's just like it's not a particularly interesting point, but I like to watch all the highlights. It helps me to think about who I like and helps me to think about how I see the sort of game, especially in the early weeks. So I've caught up a bit on YouTube highlights, but it's not quite the same. I saw a little bit of Match of the Day, but yeah. Go on, Jossy, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I pretty much checked out. I pressed a few buttons before international break, a few preparatory buttons for my free hit, and then the trip just gave me a chance to switch off, to be honest, and not lot to think about until get back. I think we're all looking at a few flags in our team. So just waiting to see how they progress. Are they international break injuries, or is something more legitimate?
Yeah, I typically kind of try and down tools a bit like you've suggested, Jossy, during international break. I think the only thing I don't watch England generally because, you know, I know what they do, so I'm not really interested. It's not really football in the strictly sense of the word, so I'm not really interested in that. But instead, actually, one thing because I was debating with Jossy before we went on whether I would start with my because I throw in the odd new linguistic greeting, and I've got Vistu Hal this week as my language greeting for the week. So if anyone in the chat wants to guess what that is, but it does relate to. I've gone down a kind of reading. This is what I do during international breaks. I usually pick a subject matter and start getting really interested in something that will distract me from football, because we all know that I don't really want to talk about football, but you know, it's how it works one way or another. But I went down a kind of reading hole of kind of late Anglo-Saxon England, and so I don't know anything about it. I used to obviously teach history, and obviously I've lectured mainly in Russian history, but you know, you go down these kind of rabbit holes of suddenly becoming interested in something, and now I know everything about Arthur Canute and Harold Harefoot and all these kind of people that I'd never heard of before. So it's very, very exciting. But sadly not for today. The only thing actually I did listen to that was FPL related. I really we'll get him on at some point. We've been talking in the background to our good friend Ivan, who FPL Royser, and I did enjoy the listening to him on the above average the other night as well. I was trying to think, if Ivan comes on here, Danny, there's a danger that the whole episode might be a bit sort of like Gardener's World or something. Can you imagine me and Ivan in the same room talking? It'd be really nice, wouldn't it? It'd be like The Good Life or something.
Yeah, it would be lovely.
So that's the only. It won't be. So you'd have to be especially edgy during when Ivan comes on at some point or another.
Okay.
But,
I will.
That's the thing. Anyway, this week I'll just show you all what we're about.
I was just going to say, sorry, Richard, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but you didn't tell me about that reading. It's funny you say that, because I've got two, going too far off topic, but I've got two new books that are both about a similar thing, about kings and queens of England, and I've just started one last night, the David Mitchell one called Unruly. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's about all the sort of kings and queens of England, and it's going to be, and we start off around that same period. So it's funny you say that. And then I've got another book that's it's called something like the England in 10 Enemies or something. It's like about sort of 10 major enemies of England. So I've got starting.
Yeah, that will probably overlap a little bit with the whole Saxon thing. But yeah, really interesting. I think it's kind of in the public window at the moment, because there's a television show about William the Conqueror and that kind of stuff. So it's quite interesting. Who is a complete git. But I know I'm about 1,000 years late to slag him off. But never mind. Worth getting one in there anyway. Plus, Kings and Queens, but it probably escapes me. I mean, actually, I was about to say something that will probably get me cancelled, but not typically a royalist in here. That probably won't shock anyone either. But yeah, good reading, excellent. Anyway, back to Flow State. Wildcard and free hit active. So two of us are on chips this week. FOMO has interrupted my flow, but quite reasonable comment. This is the poshest FPL podcast. I would say cultured, not posh. We don't have any money, if that helps. We just have interests.
And in fairness, you have got a Scouser on. I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we've been trying to appeal to the common man through. We got Liverpool and Manchester covered. It's not all kind of southwest London here by any means. Free hit active and wildcard. So two of us are on chips this week, so we'll be diving into that as soon as we are able. But a quick update of the mini league. Still available to join. I will read out the code. Thankfully, no mothers or fathers-in-law in the top 5 that I have flashed on the screen this week. I'm sure they'll be back. They'll let me know. Let's face it, when they're beating the hell out of Danny and I. At least for the beginning part of the season. Hopefully, we'll do better in the long run. But mini league code LZKI6K. Jossy, you're presumably number 6 on this list, right?
Just a little outside that, I believe.
Just a little bit, yeah. Okay, yeah. Danny's probably 7. I'm probably, yeah. We're probably around there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think I'm pretty sure Paulie Urson has retained his lead over the break. I don't know if he's played another chip, but he used a couple, didn't he? Before I don't know if Danny's looking it up, but he's on 227. He's 21 points ahead of Johnny Eggs, who's usually in the chat, hopefully. And I don't know if his other half is in. I think they're in the top 10 or 15 as well. So still an incredible effort there. And our good friend Stu is bringing up the rear in the top 5 there. A bit of a dive, relatively speaking, with 60 points. But
yeah, he's
I
on
don't know.
there.
I'm guessing they're thrashing all of us anyway, aren't they? So
Paul's on wildcard.
Is your mother-in-law still competing?
I've deliberately dodged this one. She has been listening to the podcast, which in my head is slightly weird, but I mean, I'm glad if anyone enjoys it, as long as she shares it with all of her friends at the WI, then I guess I can't complain. So yeah, please do share more, and that would be lovely. Good. Okay, so that's there. Please do. You've got a bit of time to join. We're not going to cut off new entrants for another sort of couple of months, so you can still get in there if you want to. That's actually irrelevant. We're going to go pretty much. I have been reminded actually in the chat about the managerial change at Nottingham Forest, so actually that will be an interesting one for the fixtures when we talk them through and preview them this week. Jossy, we're more or less going to start with the free hit side of things in a minute. I've got the fixtures up on the screen, but we're going to look at your proposed team in just a minute. But and you can tell us a little bit about how you feel about these fixtures and kind of what fixtures you're particularly targeting. But do you want to tell us first of all why you're free hit? Was it part of the plan?
Yes. So it was a fairly last minute decision last week for me to wildcard. So I wildcarded last week in 3. I'd made an early transfer. It's not like me. I'd made an early transfer to sell Verts to Semenyo as the prices were fluctuating. And then I was hit with Palmer and I was hit with Strand Larsen. And Strand Larsen probably just pushed me over the edge to think, there's an opportunity here to be a little aggressive. I was keen to restructure so that I could get Haaland into the team. There was a couple of other assets I wanted to kind of jump on. And I was mindful that if I wildcarded in 3, I could go light on Liverpool and then really attack Liverpool in 4 on a free hit. And also have probably a free swing at knowing who the best 3 assets hopefully are for that Burnley game. So again, I saw an opportunity because I think we're going to struggle this year to find a free hit week whereby for a fact you're going to be benefiting versus your existing team. But I saw a quite nice window to jump on the Forest players who I had very few of, get Wood in, supposedly for a strong fixture last week. That was a bit disappointing. Get Anderson in who I didn't have, and then lose them on free hit, and then I'll have them again for the Burnley and the Sunderland game after that. Now, obviously, there's been some changes at Forest, so time will tell how that plays out. But I think free hit 4 with Palace at home to Sunderland, with the Liverpool game, but I wasn't, even if I hadn't have wildcarded last week, I'd have only had Salah for this game week. So I'd have already been using a bunch of transfers really to try and attack game week 4. So I think it worked quite nicely for me to, hopefully this week, again, we're looking at RobT's numbers here, but I'm focusing on the Liverpool fixture, the Arsenal fixture, Palace, and then there's a few fringe players around that to fill out the 11. So
I'm glad that you raised that. I wanted to first of all thank RobT because it came on about a minute before we were about to go live, and I had to throw the slides straight in. There may have been a few expletives in the background, but I am genuinely glad to put them up. So thank you very much, Rob. But yeah, just for those on audio, the top performing teams according to the sort of Solio RobT numbers. The standout ones are Arsenal, who are projected at 2.1 goals, and one of the most likely, if not the most likely, up for a clean sheet at 0.82 for Forest. The other high performers, as expected, really. Sunday game, Liverpool at Burnley, 2.41 against Burnley, 0.84. And then you've got a few others, Newcastle, which is interesting because I think a lot of people won't own them, obviously, unless you are on free hit. And of course, they outscore, for example, teams like Crystal Palace, who, are pretty popular this week. So they've got Newcastle 2.01 against Wolves 0.85, and then the other high-performing teams, City, basically a 2-1 fixture against Manchester United, and Chelsea against Brentford, and Palace against Sunderland. So, Danny, I'm going to come to you just a minute because we're going to. I want to sort of talk about two issues that are kind of related here. One is, what teams would interest you based on this week's fixtures for a free hit, if you're on it. So don't worry too much about the minutiae of putting the team together, but just what teams and particular individuals might interest you, and also just our thoughts on that kind of Nottingham Forest shenanigans that are going on in the background. So if you did have any kind of thoughts about the replacement of Nuno with Ange, which has just happened, I think this morning. I think it was late morning, wasn't it? Something like that have gone through, completely scuppering the chances of those of us who have got a Nottingham Forest defender. So, Danny, where do you want to kick off?
Oh, I don't know. That's a lot there, isn't it? In relation, just kind of mostly to this table as well, or
yeah. So just the fixtures that interest you this week for anyone on free hit, but also you can begin if you like. Any thoughts on the kind of managerial replacement at Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, and I will talk about players and free hit as well. And I guess I can't help but it just overlap with the with wildcard and what I've been thinking about. There's probably a lot of similarities anyway. I haven't really thought about Ange other than I'm not a very good person to ask, and I'm probably going to offend quite a few Spurs fans, but I just don't rate Ange at all because I think he did a shocking job at Spurs. I think they were absolutely shit under him last season. And I just thought it was quite incredible the way he went about things. So, but I mean, having said that, obviously, I think teams do typically tend to start well under him because I think he's a good man manager. The players like him. He's a motivator, and his kind of approach does produce goals, and I can see it being reason. I don't. It's such a contrast. It's a bit like not really sure what to make of it because it's a bit like we talk about West Ham. Going from David Moyes and a David Moyes team to Potter. I mean, it's probably not quite as extreme, but it's a very strange sort of mix, isn't it? When you've got because it's a bit like Moyes with Nuno, where he's drilled them so much so, hasn't he, into his kind of way of playing, and he that's what he does, and he takes them to that point, and they are kind of as good as they can be in that particular style of play, which I don't think they really wanted at Forest anyway. And then he doesn't really go beyond that. And then you just go with Ange, who's just kind of completely counter to that whole kind of approach of just sit back and hit on the brake and be really solid, and he's just going to be gung ho. So I have no idea what it's going to look like. It's going to be carnage, I would imagine, because I've never seen him adapt in the way he approaches that sort of Ange. I mean, I've obviously not seen him much. There's a bit of when he was in Scotland, wherever it was, and then at Spurs. But I don't think he's the sort of manager who really adapts his style. He just has one style, which is another reason why I don't think he's all that great. I mean, I wouldn't be delighted as a Forest fan at all personally, because that's just my view. Because you'd want to look at it as whatever goes after Nuno, you want to see it as a long-term project, and where are we going to be in 2 years? Are we going to take this step up from where we were in Europe? And I don't see Ange as a long-term project. I see him as a short-term, score some goals and cause some carnage for 2 or 3 months, and then after 6 months, everyone's going to get injured, and they're going to start dropping like a fly. We lost Jossy there. Is he frozen? No, he's all right. Sorry, Jossy's screen froze on my screen. He's back. He's back. Might have just been my screen. So, yeah, I mean, I like it for free hit and wildcarders. I don't know what Jossy thinks, because on paper, I don't know. Does it make Arsenal look better? I don't know, actually. I think it probably does. I mean, it does in terms of a win. I'm not sure what it means in terms of a clean sheet, but was he really going to have very long to work with the players? I would imagine it's better for Arsenal.
Yeah, gut feel it's probably better for Arsenal. I mean, I just touched on the fact that you said he doesn't adapt. I think that's largely true, but he did seem to adapt for the express intention of winning the Europa League. He seemed to actually be able to tighten up and play a defensive game specifically to get through some of those games. Now, I don't think he's going to take that on to a new role in a new team, because his attitude is, this is who we are, mate. But like you say, he's not going to have an awful lot of time to do anything, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, no, that's true. To be fair, there was the odd game. I mean, he had the odd performance. And, I remember that when they beat Liverpool. Did they beat Liverpool 3-0 or something in the cup at one point? And there were some strange sort of outliers in performances by Spurs. So yeah, maybe a bit unfair in terms of adapting. I don't really know what that looks like, but I mean, how is he going to approach it in the first few days? I don't know. And I mean, I would imagine the Forest players aren't particularly happy. I would imagine that the Forest players liked Nuno. It's always what it seemed to be the case. So yeah, I don't know. It's probably not worth talking too much about that, other than I think you have to like it for Gyökeres, for example. And so people who are on free hit will be pushed more towards Gyökeres. People who are on wildcard will feel better about this particular fixture if you're on Gyökeres. And I think beyond that, that's about it, really. It probably stays the same in terms of Arsenal defence and goalkeeper. Sorry, go on, Rich.
No, I'm glad that you started with a little bit of veering into Arsenal chat here, because I don't think I'm the only one who's probably seen a whole bunch of kind of shared clips of Gyökeres so far this season generally, but also like Sweden, there was an example earlier in this international break, and heavy touches, being sort of cumbersome, heading towards the corner flag and that sort of thing. And obviously international game caveat and that sort of thing, but it was being done with Arsenal games before the break as well. Are you both pretty comfortable with that pick in your respective situations? So Jossy, particularly on a free hit, is he kind of a must-have? Because should we say, I can understand people who have doubts about the player, but of course it does feel like it is a sort of must-own situation in your situation.
Kind of, yes, but I think you sometimes can get a little bit blinded on a free hit, that you want those shiny toys that you don't have or can't have in your current team, trying to be a little bit different. One example is João Pedro, who isn't in the current draft, and there is a worry there that maybe I'm just looking at the new shiny toys. But focusing on Gyökeres, he hasn't really set the world alight yet. He scored well against Leeds. One was a penalty. One was a run into the box that I don't think he should have got away with, to be honest. So yeah, he hasn't set the world alight. Forest have been really strange this season. I started with Forest defence, many of us did, and haven't seen any clean sheets from them. And yeah, really poor result for them last time out. I just don't know what Forest we're going to get. But it does feel like a little bit of a must-own. You look at the RobT's numbers, well, backs that up.
Yeah, so there is a temptation to overthink, isn't there, a little bit? But I mean, given a striker on penalties with no real, not a huge amount of competition for minutes, and Forest being a little bit of a, in a concerning situation, I think it is a bit of a must pick, etc. But you'll be, and of course, it should be said with Forest, they're not going to be playing sort of Callum Wilson and Jimmy Somerville every week, By the way, that Jimmy Somerville reference was on purpose. Yeah, if you're from the 80s, you know why that's funny. But yeah, double defence to accompany Gyökeres for you in your team, Jossy?
So at the moment, yes, but I'm a little bit cold on it, because in the age of DEFCON, I feel like the Arsenal defence, that undoubtedly they're going to have the best chance for clean sheet this week, but they feel a little bit of a flat. You're likely to get 6 at best out of them, which doesn't feel like a free hit punt. But then again, back to your point a minute ago, maybe it's just overthinking to not get a couple of the defenders from the team who are most likely to keep a clean sheet this week. So at the moment, yes, but I feel like they're not overly exciting.
Cool. Okay. So I think what we might do, this might be a good time to
go on. Are you going to switch to teams, or are we going to talk about anything else?
Only Jossies, and then we can potentially.
But one thing I would say on this page, and maybe it's indicative of the injury to Sarr, the loss of Eze, but the Crystal Palace numbers there, at home to Sunderland, 1.69 expected goals. It's a lot lower than I expect. I do only have Mateta at the moment, and he's on penalties, and I still think he's a good pick. But you see that then alongside the Newcastle expected numbers, and it does make you wonder, are Crystal Palace going to have it as easy against Sunderland as we think they will? That's just one thing that makes me think. It's an interesting thing from RobT's numbers.
We'll definitely have to discuss people like Mateta in our teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on, Rich. You go the direction you want.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll show Jossie's team in just a minute, because I'm interested in starting to kind of get into these conversations through the lens of his team. But actually, before we do, Jossy, because I think it would always be remiss of me to bring you on here and not do a sort of Liverpool focus. Given that you're obviously in-house knowledge, so to speak. That fixture there, I'm also interested in the kind of makeup of your team from a Liverpool perspective. Are you focused? Do you feel confident enough in knowing what attackers you want to back in that fixture?
So the first thing I'll say, that my current draft, which you're not going to show in a moment, has 4 Liverpool players in it. I did press the buttons in advance, so I've got Isak, I've got Ekitike, I've got Salah, and I've also got Gakpo before the transfer. So I was hoping that I could potentially cling on to the 4. Now it's not realistic anyway, because one of those 4 is not going to start. I'll guarantee that. Obviously, the big news before this week is that Isak's now come in, and as you're alluding to, that adds an awful lot of uncertainty now into what's going to happen moving forward. I think we can have as confident as you can be. I think we can have a relative level of comfort of who's going to, in terms of, I think Gakpo's probably going to start. And my gut feel is that Ekitike almost certainly starts. We didn't see significant numbers from Isak in the international break. I think he got on 72 minutes last night. It was the night before. There's a chance Isak starts. I mean, I'm clinging on to wait and see what Slot says. Does he say anything as plainly as, yeah, Isak's ready to go? But gut feel is Ekitike's done nothing to deserve being dropped at the first opportunity to play Isak. He's been fantastic. Does probably lean you to reduce minutes for whichever one you pick anyway. Even if I say Ekitike is going to start, it's probably 65, 75 max. And Isak's going to get some minutes. But that might be enough with the Burnley fixture. I think you have to attack those Liverpool fixtures. I'm going to be attacking it from a triple up in attack point of view, rather than any defenders. But I mean, we're talking now about free hit, but moving forward, ultimately Isak's going to start. He's the £125 million striker that we've fought for all summer. And I think, as most have probably said, or as some of the chatters alluded to, it's probably going to be Ekitike, Gakpo shared in minutes. And how that looks, one of them may make that left wing position their own, and then it's a case of sharing around European time. But I think, and this is one of the reasons why I like the idea of wildcard and 3 with no Liverpool. I deliberately left the money in the bank so I can move directly from any of my strikers to Isak in 5, in 6. But I've allowed myself the time to decide who are the Liverpool players I want, and then jump on those at a later stage.
Yeah, no, that's exciting stuff. Yeah, no, so yeah, you have that ability to go to Isaac, and where many won't. We'll bring up your team. Like I say, I can come back to these fixtures in a minute, but I'm interested to start understanding your thought process, and we can give you some notes if you're interested. I think this is the one that we've landed on for now. I know that it's basically I haven't put up the illegal, edgy, interesting one with sort of 5 Liverpool players and 4, however many Chelsea and Crystal Palace and all of that. I'm immediately also reminded that my team, which was basically looking quite fine before the international break, is now, I forgot, Verse was sort of grimacing towards the end of his fixture as well. So that's another thing to think about.
I think he's okay, but although he does seem to be struggling with the load at the moment, the Premier League is intense, and look, I think he's going to be a regular starter. But at the moment, he's probably getting himself acclimatized to the pace and the.
Yeah, he's fine. He's just a 2-week break.
Oh, absolutely.
He's just scored for Germany as well, hasn't he?
Yes, he did. He did.
Yeah.
So he's just getting himself up to speed. Bit of cramp, I think.
Let's do the readout for the audio types. This is one of Jossy's drafts anyway. I think the balance is probably roughly what you're going in the right direction of, even if it's not the final thing. So Raya in goal, a particular favourite of Danny and I's from last year. Munoz and Lacroix alongside Gabriel, with Salah captain, Semenyo, Gakpo and Njai. So those are quite interesting mid-price spots, aren't they? We'll come to Semenyo and Njai in a minute, because I should imagine that's a bit of a debate for a lot of free hitters. Mateta with the Vice, alongside Gyökeres and Ekitike, and on the bench, basically a load of Liverpool Leeds players, really. But Dubravka, Rodon, King, and Goodmanson. Danny, we'll come to this later on, actually, but when I was during the international break, I did forget to tweet this out, but I was thinking to myself, the first name on anyone's wildcard team should be Goodmanson. I don't know whether you have him, so I don't know. I might be barking up the wrong tree here, but to ignore him, I would take some real.
I don't know. He is in my team, but I'm not sure that's optimal, to be honest. I'm not convinced entirely by it, because obviously he doesn't have the depth on.
It's the cat. It's the cat.
She's arrived. Well, yeah, I'm not convinced totally that it's the right thing. I mean, he's looked good bonus wise, looked good attacking wise, which is good. But these guys that you may, be on a bench boost or have to come in off the bench, it would be nice to have the DEFCON guys. So I don't know on a wild card. Models would probably side with your Rodons and your Ekdals and what's his name, the Burnley dude.
Esteve.
Interestingly, I went away from, as I say, wildcarded last week, and I think if there's someone you want to play an awful lot, I think I'd rather have one of the Leeds lads. The only reason I stuck with Esteve, and I wonder if I regret it or not, was that because I've got Esteve and Dubravka, and at some point I'll want to bench boost, I thought it was easier to try and shoehorn that in at some point when they both have a nice fixture, rather than having a Leeds, having a Burnley.
Yeah.
He's going to be buried at the back of my bench most weeks anyway.
Yeah.
The cat's not noisy.
For the listeners, this isn't Danny doing a cat impression, although he does like to do that sort of thing. He's a bit out there. But you won't be able to see, but Jossy has an absolutely outrageously beautiful cat. So we have to allow it a little bit of meowing, because it's a ridiculous thing. And if you saw it, you would instantly melt. So you just have to rely on my eye for that. But yeah, we'll have a look at this team. I'm going to give the cat a moment just to compose itself. But Danny, when you look at this free hit lineup, any immediate notes for Jossy there? Because it's quite a nicely balanced team, isn't it? It's triple Arsenal, triple Palace, triple Pool. So any thoughts?
Yeah. I haven't really thought about free hits, so let's see. I mean, I would have Raya, I would have Munoz. Salah, obviously, probably Semenyo. Gakpo's a funny one. You know, I can see it. I can see it on a free hit. I can see it. I mean, those numbers built a minute ago with the Liverpool Burnley Liverpool had big numbers there. I mean, that terrifies me. Obviously, as someone on WILDCARD, it's one of several significant reasons why it could be particularly uncomfortable to be on WILDCARD this week if you don't have more than one Liverpool attacker, which is probably going to end up as a complete disaster. But that's where we are. But yeah, I mean, you know, with Gakpo, it is a risk. It's a little bit of a risk with the minutes. I think I'd probably be on Wirtz instead of Gakpo, to be honest, just because I think the minutes are much better. And Jai, I like a lot. I like him a lot as a pick, as a general pick. And I think Jossy maybe we'll talk through at some point what the other options are in midfield this week in terms of a free hit, because I like him a lot. I don't know. I worry a little bit about that fixture. I mean, the thing that really shocked me before on the numbers on the RobT, Rich, was was Villa's. I mean, Villa's numbers are just unbelievable. I mean, what has happened? What has happened to Villa? This is the thing. This is like, and it's a relevant thing to the free hit and to all the discussions. Because to me, it's just 3 games, and I'm like, Villa will be fine. It's Emre, but all the models have completely, you know. And I saw like 11FI's teams rating model, which normally isn't very reactive, or at least most team models aren't very reactive, and it had Villa in like 11th or 12th best team in the Premier League. Wow. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And then the RobT numbers a second ago had Villa, I don't know, like 1 expected goal against Everton, who haven't been defending well. It just surprises me a little bit. I can kind of understand that it's hard to call, but I don't see that really with that game. I think Villa will take some beating in that game still. So I don't know what I'm missing there with Villa. But obviously it is relevant to the Ndiaye thing. I think Ndiaye is the best pick for Everton. But I mean, it's in the same conversation, so you can tell us, Jossy, because the most interesting and kind of exciting team on a free hit this week is kind of Newcastle, I suppose, or at least one of them.
Yeah.
But it is an absolute nightmare. I understand that it's a nightmare with the minutes with Newcastle, because again, I've been away last week. I've not really had a chance. I think Newcastle is the only game that I haven't seen any highlights for, and I know they drew 0-0 against Leeds. And I heard, which I hadn't realised at the time because again I was away, that Elanga didn't even play, which is surprising. So you've got Elanga who was benched, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in a minute. And then nobody can really tell if Harvey Barnes is ever going to start, which is a funny one. And then you've got Gordon, I think he's still suspended, isn't he? And I think Visser and obviously, Walter Maid or whatever his name is. And I'd be doing some hardcore inspecting on predicted team news there, because I mean, you never really know with Eddie Howe, but you would think that you would think that Barnes is going to play and Langer is probably going to play as well. And that one of those two, I think I'd be tempted to roll the dice on just for a bit of fun. Or even Harvey Elliott in the same game with Everton Villa. It's always a funny one with Ndiaye, and it's something I do need. I really, really like Ndiaye as a pick. And I even would like to find way in WILDCARD, but he hasn't got very good fixtures for the next 4, to be honest. Which is why he's not really an option on WILDCARD. But as a season-long pick, I think he's brilliant. But in free hit, I'm always a bit like, especially against Villa. So it depends who the alternatives are for you, Jossy, really.
Yeah, that particular position is likely to be a bit of a punty one. Harvey Barnes was in the draft originally. I would really like to, but his minutes just don't look secure. So it is one I'll be keeping my ears to the ground. We can't rely on anything Eddie Howe tells us. So I don't know if we get anything. And there's no decent team leaks coming out of Newcastle or ITKs. But yeah, the Newcastle fixture looks one that's really good to attack. It feels like Everton have got some goals in them at the moment. Yeah. And maybe the models might be a little bit slow to... So it's 2 things with that Everton Villa game. Villa have started slow and haven't looked at it. Everton at home at Goodison, their new stadium, they've had some goals in them this season, and Ndiaye's on pens. Grealish has been creating an awful lot for them. I mean, it's a good chance Ndiaye might be the one who would get any goal, and that could be a decent return if he just gets to one. So
no,
he is tempting.
Yeah, it is a solid pick, to be fair. And I'm sort of creating conversation where maybe there doesn't need to be one, because it is a really safe, solid pick. And I do think he's the best pick. I mean, I think Grealish, I think it's been said a few times already this week, it's nothing new, but I think Grealish makes Ndiaye significantly better, because he is just such a kind of creative force, and he's so good at getting a delivery in and making something happen. Grealish, he's become even better at that particular thing at City. I don't. That's a long conversation. I think he was a better player before he went to City in terms of what he did. But what he does do now is very rarely gives it away, very rarely makes a mistake, and it's Ndiaye who's always at the back post waiting for something to happen. So it does look a lot better for Ndiaye, and then even with the strikers, they've just got essentially Beto and Barry like facilitators, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it does look good. I just expect Villa to be a bit of a force in the game myself. Go on, Rich.
Yeah, I think good opportunity to play a bit of devil's advocate with your free hit team here, Jossy. So I'm just going to throw out some names in a few minutes' time. But actually, looking up and down the kind of list of options that would be exciting for a sort of punt spot, either in midfield or striker. One of the problems is actually there's a lot of you're hamstrung in a lot of areas actually in terms of the validity of some of the punts, right? So I've been reading in and around just whilst you've been talking. So Visser went off after 73 minutes for DR Congo, and he looked like he had a slight niggle. So already that's one that people would have been quite interested in, because you tend to think that he's slightly more likely to start given his experience in the Premier League, that sort of thing for a team with projected over 2 goals. So there's that debate. Marmouche has gone off after 10 minutes with an injury. So that affects City and what you might think, because that's quite an interesting little spot there as well. Team, again, projected over 2 goals. Someone who's perhaps easier for you to fit into a slot than Haaland. So there's a lot of kind of players who you might be tempted with, but there have little caveats, don't they? Even Eze, is he going to get the minutes? What position is he going to play, and that sort of thing? So it is quite difficult to nail down. I was even looking at Newcastle, and Danny mentioned their lineup, so I thought I'd have a little bit of a look. And perhaps someone in the chat will know a bit more about the context for this. But it looks like they had 5 at the back. Barnes didn't start. Obviously, Gordon suspended. No striker. Murphy was playing on the right instead of Elanga. So it's quite difficult to see. I can see why you've gone with 1 or 2 relatively safe players like Ndiaye, when you could have maybe gone for a Barnes or tried to fit in a Wisser by perhaps taking the vert slot instead of an Ekatite, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think for me, looking at your team, the ones that I would be a little bit more confident on that you might want to hear something about, and then that could change things, would probably be Chelsea to some extent, because I think obviously if you did hear something on Palmer, or Palmer's out and then you got Enzo on penalties, I'm not saying that's an incredible pick either, but these are the kind of things that might potentially affect you just a little bit, and I think they are possibly one of the more safe areas. But Newcastle's quite tricky, isn't it? Because where do you necessarily go? I've heard Lewis Hall mentioned earlier this week as well. That's quite an interesting sort of defensive one up against Team Wolves, who don't really have a good right-hand side defender. Maybe there's a bit of narrative in that, but that's possibly another one as well. But any of those names float your boat, Jossy?
Well, it has crossed my mind. So I talked before about how Gabriel and Reyes maybe not overly inspiring for a free hit, and if I was gonna move away from one Arsenal, I think Lewis Hall is someone I had considered, because you would hope that Newcastle would do well there, and he was great last year. And you're right, I noted that they played 3 at the back. The other one is Semenyo's in there at the moment. Bournemouth's numbers aren't predicted particularly high here either. He's been great this season, and I've got him in on wildcard, and so there's a little part of me that doesn't want to get burned by him, considering he is a good pick in good form. So maybe that's a little bit of a protection move that I'm keeping him in there. But yeah, I mean, he's looking good at the moment.
Those who are watching the visual version of this, our friend FOMO in the chat shouted out that there's a chance, obviously, with no Gordon and no strikers being a little bit absent, that Cher could be on penalties this week. I swear I always pick Cher on free hit. You know, there are certain players who you never get to own, but usually free hit drops in a week where Newcastle have got a crap team at home. And Cher, I swear, always seems to be on my free hit. So I concur, FOMO. I don't know why. He's a guy, he's done pretty well, actually, for me in the past. So he scored against Spurs when they had that crazy 5-1 win or something, 6-1 win a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's a pretty good shout as well. Any other names you want to throw in the hat there, Danny, before we kind of start to perhaps have a look at some of our other teams as well?
I was just looking at Hall's minutes. I don't know what. I know you mentioned he didn't start last game. I don't know what's going on with Hall, but the fact that he hasn't started a game yet, he's been subbed on twice. I just wouldn't go near it. Yeah. Just because I've heard other people mention this week, and I might be wrong. You might be nailed to play, but if someone hasn't played, they're just not getting into a free hit team. There's too many good picks on offer. I was just wondering whether you'd consider someone like a Timber or something for Arsenal, just a free hit.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I mean, when the guy's just got 24 points, I know it's just a one-off game and stuff, but it's still slightly indicative of the type of guy that he is and like the positions he gets into and the set piece threat and just how attacking. I mean, 2 goals and an assist in any game is ridiculous for a defender, isn't it? So I wonder if I understand that if there is a worry, I don't know what the Ben White situation, Timber situation is. I suppose he is a player who can sub on. You know, that's the worry, isn't it? I suppose with a Timber. Is it if he doesn't start, he could easily come on, whereas someone else, obviously there's Lewis Skelly and Calafiori. I know they're a bit, but like you say, it is difficult because Gabriel, you are at the moment relying on a goal, which can happen in any game, and for more than 6 points. And I do understand it's a solid pick, Gabriel. Timber is
more exciting.
It's a little bit more. It's definitely more exciting, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
I also think. I do think there's a high ceiling for Anderson this week at Fulham, and that's another one of them where he probably is in your team when you're not free hitting, and it's like you sort of come off him. Yeah. But again, you're looking for the guys on DEFCON, which he is one, and the guys. What was it someone said about Anderson? Now I can't remember. It might have just been that. Oh, actually, yeah, no. It was someone sort of, which is an interesting point. To be fair, that Farke's Leeds have historically always been terrible at defending set pieces. And corners, and obviously that does make me think about Anderson straight away because he is always there in the corners. And I think about even against United, he had a couple of big chances. He was always right in that 6-yard box. He's that type of player. But I think that's quite an interesting point actually, because that is very true about the Leeds side. They typically hasn't been the strongest area. Although to be fair, I didn't watch them in the last few months of the season. So Anderson is another one. And then, free hits. Let me have a quick run through. You mentioned City. Chelsea's difficult because who again, it's a bit of inspection into the predicted lineups because I don't know with Chelsea who's gonna start, basically. Neto. I mean, the minutes are just all over the place, aren't they? Neto and Garnacho. And I mean, we might as well talk quickly about João Pedro there because and the free hit and the player, and he plays for a lot of teams and he's relevant to my wildcard team because it is so all over the place with João Pedro. It's such a frustrating one at the moment because objectively, he isn't a player who just gets, incredible numbers and great XG and great chances. He's just a fantastic footballer. And then he has got ridiculous amount of minutes now and coming up, and he's playing for Brazil tonight, so it kicks off at midnight at 12:30 our time, so half midnight. I'm pretty sure it's tonight. It's today Tuesday. I think today's Tuesday. Yeah, so I think it's 12:30 tonight. So that's 8:30 Brazil time. So I've actually, I've been thinking about what happens because this is important because what you would think does he get straight on a plane tonight and then he's therefore encouraged to then lie down and just go to sleep on the first class flight? Because surely that is by far the best case scenario for his recovery. Because that's because it's not too bad 4 hours behind, is it? Brazil. I'm pretty sure Brazil is 4 hours behind. Which seems strange because obviously, is it? Someone might need to check that. I think it is. Even though it's so,
what is it? New York and stuff is 5 hours.
Exactly. New York's 5. So I think it is 4-ish anyway. So it's not too bad. So I was sort of thinking, well, if he does get sort of 11:30 by the time he can, maybe midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning before he can get on a plane. Which will he do that? He surely would, because anything else would be well worse for recovery than just having to sleep on the plane tonight and arriving back in London tomorrow.
Apparently, it's in La Paz.
Ah, okay.
Which is not great. That's in Bolivia, isn't it? So.
Okay. So that would be a bit different. That'll be a good bit different then.
So, yeah.
What's that? 6 or 7 hours? I don't know.
Yeah, that's got to be a bit more, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I should have looked at that. You know what I mean? It sounds like nothing, but it really is significant when you go on. He's already been playing a lot of minutes, and it's South America. They play on Saturday night. But of course, the flip side of it is we know that Delap is now out until November. I think the reports today were that he's not going to be training until November, which is what people thought anyway, because it looked like a bad hamstring thing. And he's so important that you do expect him to just play. It's not just does he play, but it's also what would he be like if and when he does play. And that's why it's relevant about like when does he get back? How long has he got to recover? Because this kind of Wednesday to Saturday with that jet lag. Do you know what I mean? So it's all, but at the same time, also because Delap's out, if he is going to play, I do expect him to play more in the number 9, if Palmer's fit, should I say, or even if he's not. I mean, who knows with Palmer? I think Palmer's 50-50. Palmer will probably end up playing. I don't know, but I see Pedro now as like he has got. So then they play a Saturday, and then they play Bayern Munich on Wednesday, I think, and then they play Man United again on the Saturday. So it's Saturday. So it's South America Saturday night, Bayern Munich Wednesday, Man United Saturday. And then I think after that, there's an EFL Cup game, so he's probably got a week off, which is good.
Because he is so important to them, do they have to protect him a little bit? Not even if they do start him, don't play him in a lot of minutes.
I don't. It's obviously a good point, but I think the word protect is too much when you're talking about a 23-year-old. I think when they're 23, I think it just depends on the individual and the type of, because you do get some individuals whose body is kind of the perfect shape and size and mechanics of like the the muscles and the bones. And I don't really know. João Pedro's 6'2". He's a big guy. I don't really know if he's been put under this kind of strain before. But you do get players who have no problem playing fairly regularly, and obviously your regeneration is 23 is peak, isn't it? And so I don't think protection would be. I don't think it would be an issue, protection, because of the type of player that he is. I mean, saying that, I'm now my mind's now being distracted to that horrendous Cunha captaincy of mine last week, where he just does whatever he's done to his muscles. I was going to say pull his hamstring, which obviously didn't do, the prick. He obviously did something that wasn't as bad as that. But that was kind of following on from playing on the Wednesday, wasn't it? Playing 90 minutes in that fucking EFL Cup game. And then his muscles gone on the Saturday. So I'm saying that, and I don't know. I don't think we've seen that from Cunha before. But the reason why I'm going on with myself is because it is driving me a bit nuts, the João Pedro thing, about because there's also is just that thing sometimes of, there are two little things in that, is that sometimes you just get a player who's just on it and they are on form, and it is about getting on the, jumping on the ship, and you just get a player who kind of inexplicably scores goals, and it's a bit like Chris Wood last season. And sometimes you just have to give that a little bit of weight, just a little bit of to add to everything else, that you just see that. And the other thing was on Saturday, on the highlights that I did see, whenever Chelsea played, he did just have this one chance when he was through 1-on-1, which again I didn't know about until I just watched the other day, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, that would have been even worse if he just scored that. It was just a perfect touch that he made. It was just one of these moments where you go, Jesus, yeah, like that touch when he's going through 1-on-1. Like, this guy isn't arsed whether he's through 1-on-1 or in the 10. He's just doing everything right. So it is really difficult, because at the same time, a lot of his chances have come from set pieces as well, haven't they? And he scored like 2 headers from corners or something already, and which is another string to his bow. But it's like, what are Chelsea? I don't know how much of their XG are coming from set pieces and penalties, and how much they are actually looking like a good attacking force.
It is incredible, isn't it? How João Pedro seems to have just been exactly in the right place at the right time during set. I mean, only really one of his attacking actions seems to be a sort of purposeful open play kind of move. Everything else seems to be that sort of a little bit of a pinball situation. Not saying that there's no skill in that, but it is surprising. I have to say a couple of things about João Pedro. Just because, by the way, now Danny, you know I have a thing about player heights. And the internet doesn't agree on what height he is. It seems to skit around between 5'10" and 6'2", and no one really knows. Someone needs to measure João Pedro.
He's
so if you know where he is,
I'll tell you now. He's 6'2". You look at on the pitch. He's
look.
I mean, I'm 6'3". I'm telling you now, João Pedro is not 5'10".
Someone needs to go up to him with a tape measure. That's all I'm saying. But I'm going to just read this out because whilst I was looking up his height, which by the way Wikipedia thinks that he's 6 foot, but we'll debate that. But he, João Pedro, this is a bit of trivia for anyone who's just watching in. His parents, presumably his dad was a former professional footballer, whose his dad was jailed for 16 years in 2002, serving for being an accessory to murder. It's so much more interesting in South America, isn't it? That doesn't happen. Doesn't happen here. So that's very, very exciting. And also, just a quick well done to anyone who bought João Pedro last week, who instead of buying Chris Wood. So well done to those people. Really skilled move. They obviously really saw something. So well done, those people. Yes.
No, well done. It was.
But yeah. Any last words on this free hit then, Jossy? Because it's going to be a lot of overlap. We're going to talk about Danny and I's teams in a minute. So
not really. I think an awful lot of it is fairly locked in, to be honest. The one thing that I had questioned is whether Lacroix is necessary. The investment in Lacroix, when I'm not sure how much DEFCON is going to be accrued against Sunderland at home. And whether a Richards or a Gahey, but then Lacroix does offer some attacking threat.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So no, I think my free hit's going to look largely like this. I think it'll be one or two tweaks. It kind of picks itself to an extent.
Brilliant. Okay, let's. I know there are all sorts of other slides that we got at the moment, and we'll come to them in a different way, but. I think what we'll do, we'll sandwich the chips. We'll have a chip sandwich. There you are, or a chip butty if you're from a certain part of the world. I'm not, so we'll go with sandwich, which is the proper term. But let's go for this. Is my kind of boring lot. So I thought, we'll keep everyone excited about Danny's. What chips Danny on? I'll copy him. He's really clever. We'll do that one in a few minutes' time. Now, to be honest with you, my team I thought was in reasonable shape before the international break, but I don't know. Everything seems to, lots of little things that are kind of niggly. I think if all of the bad stuff had happened before the international break, I might have been a bit more tempted to use the button myself. But you got little issues with Murillo, obviously, in the Forest situation. You got Sarr. Unfortunately, I mean, at least he scored before that injury, I suppose. That's something, isn't it? I always feel slightly less crap about that when the player actually scores beforehand. You've got maybe a flag on Wirtz. You've got Rodon flag, which I believe is okay. So there's lots of little things. Anyway, I'll read out this team for the audio. It's just one transfer with, I think, 2.3 in the bank. So I probably will have to use it to do something about Sarr. But Mad Bob Sanchez in goal, Pedro Porro, Anderson, and Rodon, who edges out Murillo for obvious reasons. Sarr injured, Wirtz, Salah captain, Reinders and Bruno, and then João Pedro and Watkins with Dubravka, Murillo, Esteve, and Gui on bench. So yeah, simple conundrum of having to replace Sarr, probably. I would love a miracle recovery because that would sort out all of my problems and I could just bring in Munoz like I'd planned. But
you're looking strong this week. Very strong.
Do you think so?
Yeah, it's slightly annoying. I wish I had made the terrible suboptimal decision of starting the season with full crook, and my team might look as good as this as well in week 4.
I thought we were friends.
No, it's kind of annoying because I'm looking at it now, kind of for the first time, and it's obviously we had very similar teams, didn't we, on to start the season, and that was pretty much the midfield that I probably and the striker with Watkins that I probably should have, but.
I think 12 or 13 were the same, from memory. So it was full Krug. Obviously, a huge mistake for obvious reasons. I think if I'd had Strand, for example, obviously, again, it's completely suddenly a different scenario, isn't it? Because obviously, a better pick and someone who I think people should still be interested in. He's gone a bit under the radar for anyone who's planning forward now, but that's an interesting one. So yeah, no, I'm laying off chips for obvious reasons. I'm on a diet. Nice. But we will go to probably replacing Sarr, unfortunately. There is a tiny bit of me that would just love to take a hit because I had promised myself Munoz this week and I'm going to be upset. I know that the circumstances have changed, but I wanted that to happen and now it's not going to happen. It's always quite annoying to accept.
I can already guess who you're going to bring in for Sarr if you want me to guess.
Yeah, it's not too difficult. There's only 2 options really I've considered, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
In fact, do you want to guess who the 2 are?
What's in the bank?
First one will definitely be Semenyo.
Yeah.
And the second option for bringing in this week, I mean, it's possibly Paquetá because he plays for West Ham and he's a good pick. But maybe I'd have to think.
I am so boring.
Yeah.
You've got it in one there straight away. We'll talk about Paquetá because I suppose I should probably talk about him. I'll talk about him now because I think it's relevant to your team as well, or your decisions anyway, Danny. In a minute, anyway. But he's quite an interesting one. I talked to got a lovely message from Pranil, I think earlier this week, who was just wanting to ask a little bit more about Paquetá, and it is an interesting decision, isn't it? Because I know that lots of people have been flinging around terms like mini Bruno and that sort of thing, and I get it. It's nice, isn't it, when you can have it all Pac 10, any of these little things that are basically a bastardization of Danny's original Mac 10. He created it. He created it, everybody. You need to tell him that because it is true. But yeah, the only thing I'd be wary about, I think personally, if he was on a wild card, it feels like a really good pick. I think as a wild card pick, I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of reasons to go with it. He's going to be solid for, 85, 90 minutes a week. He's on penalties. He's good at them as well. He's on a fair amount of set pieces. And he's a little bit reinvigorated, and we all saw the celebration, which is the best celebration of the season, where he does his kind of throw the phone away. I mean, it was so cool. Everyone must have seen that by now.
I know. I want to talk about that celebration. Yeah,
it's great, isn't it? The obvious thing, though, I mean, I know that people will know this by now. No assist for the whole of last season, and he hasn't looked like getting one this season either, to a large extent, but that's largely circumstantial. And then you've got a lack of open play threat. So I think it is fair to say he doesn't get many opportunities and many shots off. The 2 goals that he scored, one as a penalty, one was a 30-yarder, wasn't it? But he has that in his locker because he is quality. He's one of those players. He is West Ham's best player. He was West Ham's best player when a couple of years ago, but it's just not gone right because of the scenario that he's faced. So I think I would pick him on wildcard. Bringing him in as a transfer is a little bit more difficult because you've got 2 teams with reasonable defenses, albeit in home games, Spurs and Crystal Palace. I think you could maybe look for something more edgy if you are planning a wild card for 6, 7, or 8. But
did you see his goal for Brazil off the bench?
A header from a couple of yards out. Yeah.
So because this is what I'm struggling with a little bit. Because I agree with everything you're saying. That's what I wanted to say to you. Is what do you say to someone who says like he hasn't really done it before in terms of goals and assists and just output? People are calling him because again I've only really started watching him. I watched obviously the highlights for the last game because I wanted to watch him closely. And people have been calling him a number 10, but he didn't look like a number 10 to me. He looked deeper than that. So what is there any sort of positional change that might suggest that he does get more?
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So first of all, people need to take into consideration that Fulkrug's out and for at least a few weeks, probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I think that does have an impact because so actually one of the things that people forget about Paquetá is that he's a big boy. He's 6 foot in himself, and he gets up. He's a good header of the ball. He's surprisingly strong. He's not the quickest by any means. He's actually surprising. He's built a little bit more like, if you think about someone like Tonali, he's got that similar kind of build to someone like that. You know, reasonably sturdy. And I think he's been used in a false 9 position before for West Ham, and he's done it reasonably effectively, you know, the sort of Firmino role or something along those lines. So I wouldn't be surprised in more difficult fixtures to him to take some minutes there from that, because there's no way that Wilson's going to be getting 80, 90 minutes, is he? Realistically, he's either going to start and get 55, 60, or he's going to come off the bench, which may even be marginally more likely for this next game. So I would think about that.
Have West Ham changed in any way in terms of their setup? Because again, totally out of touch. I'm just kind of, you know, obviously what was it in that game where
4 at the back against Forest? Yeah,
they switched, didn't they? Yeah, exactly. So that change against Forest, just explain what that is and what the implications are, and if they're going to stick with it, and what that means for West Ham. Because obviously we're working off such a small sample, and it's like, are West Ham going to just go back to being completely shit, or are we going to see a different West Ham now?
I think it's not obvious to anyone, including West Ham fans, whether that change to 4 at the back was enforced because of Agger pushing for a transfer in the last sort of 48 hours of the window, or it was decided. So that's the only thing that's quite difficult. But of course, they didn't bring in a defender of quality to replace him. So I think it's likely that they'd stick with 4 at the back. And now they've got the personnel, including a good deep-lying midfielder to play 4 at the back now. Juve will have, you know, more license on the left. The right back will probably drop back a little bit more than you might expect. So whoever's that might be. I mean, you may have noticed Wan-Bissaka was actually dropped for that last game, which is interesting in itself. So I would expect them to stick with 4 at the back, and that does have a knock-on effect to the spots in midfield. I think someone in the chat has mentioned, but Fernandes playing really did make a difference. I mean, I think he went under the radar a bit for Southampton last year because, of course, they ultimately got relegated. But he's a much more mobile, agile player, and he's going to be a starter permanent, really. He played on the left a little bit more than I was expecting. So I don't know about Paquetá's positioning. I think it's a little bit fluid, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him spend a good third of the game as a false 9 and the rest of it as a sort of something between an 8 and a 10, but we don't. It's very hard to say. As you say, the sample size is incredibly small. It's good news for Bowen, though, I would say, definitely, because him back in his favoured position is good for him as a player as well. So that's a minor note. Somerville, I wouldn't expect to start. I know some people are quite excited about that, given that he had that hand and all 3 goals, but he's not got the injury record for that.
Just watching Paquetá, I mean, because obviously the significant thing is, it would be much less of a conversation, is the DEFCON, isn't it? And like watching him again, just in the highlights and watching him closely, it did feel like he makes sort of the type of player who seems to make an awful lot of recoveries and just kind of takes possession back. I don't know if that's just a function of him being really good positionally and a clever player, and also having that free role to kind of roam where he wants. And the fact that he did seem more of an 8 in the highlights I watched rather than a 10, which is like, but it looked like, this guy is constantly kind of the one who's making a tackle or recovering the ball, which that's a big thing, because if DEFCON is consistent, then it obviously makes him a much better pick. And it's another thing that's driving me a little bit nuts, because it seems like the sensible pick, but it also. It is one of them where it's a bit early with West Ham to know what they're going to look like. I don't know. What do you reckon, Jossy, if anything?
Yeah, he's a player I've always liked, Paquetá, to be honest. I've had him in draft games, and he ticks along, and with him on penalties now. And yeah, he's someone I think you're right. I don't have him now on wildcard last week, but he's definitely someone I've got my eye on. Give a couple of weeks, see if he might be an exit route from Anderson if once those fixtures dry up a little bit, and depending on how Forest develop. Yeah, he's definitely of interest.
That celebration, I mean, I know Rich touched on it, but West Ham fans must have loved that, because that was... Not only was it a great celebration, but it was executed, wasn't it? It was with like some class. It was just like, yeah, that is... And then kissing the badge afterwards. And I thought, wow. Because we talked about, like, is he going to want a fresh start after all the horrible stuff he's been through? And that's pretty amazing to sort of turn around and be like, nah, bro, this is where I'm at now, and I'm not even interested in going anywhere else. And I just think that's... Again, as a kind of silly, like, intangible to just think about, like, I just think that's pretty significant in terms of his attitude and his relationship with his teammates and how much he loves the club. Again, that's the sort of thing, in terms of thinking, in terms of talisman, and it's what it does make me even more tempted in terms of having him on wildcard. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he was a big money target for the league champions at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 85 million pounds was supposed to be the.
How old is he, Rich?
Oh, good question. It's going to be late 20s. I think he's probably 28 by now. So he's. I know what you're saying, because he's got one last sort of big move in him. But what I will say is he's the kind of player he doesn't rely on pace. So, 28 has been confirmed in the chat. So
it's good age.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's still an option for bigger teams, I suppose, at some point. So to simplify my situation anyway, to come back, I was about 20 minutes of something else in between. We're terrible. Good luck with the time stamping here, Danny, as usual. But Sarr will probably go, unless I'd love him to be fit, but it seems incredibly unlikely at this moment in time, and I'll probably have to bear with the defence, sadly. Haven't really got clear chip plans yet either, but Sarr, as you say, it seems to me that it's likely to go to Semenyo. Okay, to bore both of you to tears, just because, I mean, the man's got 2 home games followed and then Leeds, right? So it's... And at home, he's a much better prospect, in terms of numbers. So it is very difficult. I do think Paquetá is one of those weird players who, on wildcard, it would not be a shoe-in, but it would be very likely. But to bring him in as a transfer feels a little bit more difficult to do for whatever reason. So those are probably the 2 I'm looking at anyway. But any thoughts before we move on to the wildcards?
No, because the same thoughts will be on wildcards. So like I said, I think you're looking really strong. It's just no denying that. So I think it's just on paper.
Is there any part of you that would be tempted to, if the Sarr news isn't too bad, and it's like a week or something, it's unlikely, to switch Murillo to Munoz instead and just play a back 4?
I mean, I don't mind it in the sense that it depends on the form of that information on Sarr, but I mean
Sarr's going away to West Ham, then to Anfield the week after, isn't he? If you take out Sunderland,
yeah, that's what I mean. With Munoz, it is Munoz is sort of high upside, isn't it? You on paper, I mean, he probably / possibly just plays in Sarr's position, so he might be like the furthest forward player for Palace, to be honest, the whole game. But I don't know if that necessarily is like better for him and the team and all that sort of stuff. So the other thing is, I mean, games after international breaks are just so random. Especially the first one, like strange random things happen, and it's because we've got every player having all done something random and different for 2 weeks, whether it's been playing in La Paz or just having like extra Sunday roasts at home because whatever. It's just everyone's doing random shit. So the games. So with that in mind, you do need to make really kind of long-term picks and almost think a little bit less about. I mean, it makes free hit even harder, I suppose, potentially, because kind of random things happen in 1 week. But you do have to think a little bit more long term in your picks and just almost overlook this week a little bit, maybe more than other weeks. I don't know, a little bit. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So if you have any random thoughts as to who would be a better shout than Semenyo by the end of the pod, do let me know. But I think we're going to go to the wild card. So it's very much team centric tonight. Is that the one you sent, Danny?
Yeah, I only sent one, and yeah, so in the end, because I may as well just send one.
That's naughty, by the way. Someone in the chat should not be doing that to us at this hour. Salah is injured. His dog bit him. None of that. Actually, yeah. My second. Actually, I'll do one. Then I'll do my sort of my job and say, if you enjoy this content and enjoy handsome guests like Jossy and nice cat noises and chat about Anglo-Saxon England, Duplex. Or all of those things. I mean, I like all of those things. Press, the buttons, like and subscribe. I think we hit our sort of 500, and so just after the last pod, and we got very excited. Well, during the last pod, and we got very excited about that. So it does mean a lot to us. I know we're not the biggest on subs. But the quality of membership and view that we have here is extraordinarily high. So thank you very much for those people, and long may it continue. I'm going to save that question about Irish traitors until later on. Yeah. Anyway, back to the topic. Danny, your wild card. First of all, do you want to just talk us about the context here? What was wrong with your team, or is it not like that?
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, I was trying to think back, and to be honest, when I loaded this, because I loaded it on my phone and I'd loaded FPL team, and then it took me to my team. When it's not loaded, when it's just your team, when it thinks you've not done any chips. And I was like, yeah, I mean, these things happen. I went a bit more aggressive last week in going Cunha captain. It couldn't have gone any worse. It's fine. It's one of those things. I saw it as a bit of an opportunity because I was already open to a wild card anyway. I thought my team was fairly solid, and I thought Cunha was an incredible pick again at home to Burnley. So I went a bit aggressive there, and then obviously pretty much everything that could go wrong with that went wrong. And I brought Sarr in, who's injured. I think Cunha, I think, is injured in terms of this week. I've got Strand Larsen still or had Strand Larsen still, who looks injured, and kind of bare bones of defence and all that sort of stuff. So it is what it is. It's kind of. I was always open to wildcard, and obviously I said it on the last pod, didn't I, Rich? And because I also said if I know I'm going to do it. Why don't I could get Bumo instead of Sarr. So I'm actually glad, because that gap could have been a lot bigger, couldn't it? I mean, Bumo could have had a lot of points in that game, and so it did kind of make sense for me to go for that triple. So I was very thankful that Sarr scored as well, because it was only like 7 points to 10 or whatever it was. So yeah, it is what it is. I went a little bit aggressive and it didn't pay off, and so I've wildcarded, which is I'm absolutely fine with, really, in principle. In principle, in terms of information, I'm not really bothered too much about that. I think that there's just pros and cons to going now. I mean, it depends on your team. Your team, Rich, just happens to be very, very good without a wildcard, so it's perfect scenario on paper. Yeah, I'd rather be in that scenario, but I'm not. Other people are in probably not as strong a position as you, and are holding on because they want to hold on to this, to kind of whatever it is, game week 13. That's fine as well, but I think we still do have quite a lot of information, and B, it's not just information about teams, but it's information about DEFCON and a little bit about the nature of the game, and also there's also just the kind of thing of are we trying to put a little bit too much on information sometimes in these early weeks, and actually just forgetting that these long-term trends is what we should probably pay more attention to anyway, in terms of we know that Arsenal are still one of the best teams in the league and one of the best defenses. We know that Liverpool are the best, one of the best teams in the league, etc., etc. So we still kind of want these picks anyway. There's probably just a few changes, and for me, as always, a little bit like when with your game week 1 team, your price points can facilitate kind of flexibility and so on. So, but obviously there are some things that are, it's a tricky week. I mean, the worst thing about the wildcard this week, as I say, is with that team that I did have Watkins, and I still might have Watkins. Is a real headache on wildcard, and Wirtz is someone I wish I had this week, and it's not easy to kind of make these decisions around who you're gonna squeeze in for this week, and so it's painful because you kind of feel like you're wildcarding into a week where you're going to do worse again than everyone else, potentially, who is either not on wildcard, especially these guys like you, Rich, for example, to take your team, for example, because I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head, I've just looked at yours, but with a Wirtz and a Watkins, with great fixtures in the shorter term. And then, wildcards are looking at someone like a Paqueta, who's like, oh God, like I'm asking you about his DEFCON because I'm not sure he's even going to play in the right position. And it doesn't feel great in that regard. So again, this is not a finished wildcard. As usual, I'm just in like phases of moving between different players and just shifting stuff around about certain players that I do want in a wildcard and what decisions I have to make. So I mean, Gyökeres will definitely be in my wildcard. Let's start with him. We sort of didn't really touch on him enough before, did we? But I don't know. I've not really made my mind about Gyökeres. I'm not convinced that he's going to be good enough for Arsenal in terms of what they want. I don't know. I'm not saying he's not a good enough player, but he does look like he might be a bit of a flat track bully. He might be the sort of player who does do well against the weaker teams. I think both because, as a function of the fact that he's plays up front for Arsenal, a brilliant team, and he does look like a goal scorer. Like I'm just not sure in terms of the level of goal scorer, in terms of like what he can create for himself, because he does look a little bit cumbersome, doesn't he? He doesn't like the quickest player. He's built like a brick shithouse, which is not necessarily always a great thing. I don't know. He doesn't seem like that quick. He doesn't seem like that much of a handful. But his goal scoring record is ridiculous. And he does know how to find the back of the net. He knows how to finish. And he looks like he's always hunting for a goal. He looks like he's always, just goal hungry. And so they've obviously got some good fixtures coming up. I think they've got City next, which is not great. But anyway, it's just one of them. I think I'll just get on board with that because, of course, he is 90 minutes. It looks like at the moment he's nailed on penalties, and he plays for Arsenal. So he'll definitely be in. Strand Larsen is someone that I do want to find out more about. You mentioned it, Richard. I do want to find out more about his injury status because his fixtures. I just still really rate him. I need to know that it is just a minor thing because I don't mind him missing this week. But after this week, he just looks like such a good FPL pick to me. I'm just trying to get his fixtures up. But he just looks like such a good FPL pick to me. I probably don't need to elaborate on why. But he's got. I mean, I've got rough plan of free hit 6 in mind, which I'll sort of. I'll almost wait till it comes because I think with the free hit 6, some players look good. I probably will free hit 6, but he's got. So assuming he doesn't play against Newcastle, he's got Leeds at home, Spurs away in a possible free hit. Then he's got Brighton at home, Sunderland away, Burnley at home. And there's a few of these players. This is where it does get tricky with a wild card, where you're thinking about long-term picks, as in very long-term, because it is a wild card now until essentially after Christmas. Versus a lot of guys who have got these cluster of fixtures together. And it's Ollie Watkins is the other one. He has got, do you know what the app is? I don't know if it's just you guys. The app is really annoying me at the moment because it's just constantly freezing and the screens move really slowly. But Watkins as well has got, as you will know, Rich. Let's just have a look. So he's got Everton away this week. Then he's got Sunderland, then Fulham at home, and then Burnley. I mean, you couldn't. So they're both. So both Strand Larsen and Watkins are playing Sunderland and Burnley with other good home games. So let's just in that screen, for example, it's the João Pedro is a bit of a question because João Pedro there could be Watkins, and Van Dijk could be Lacroix, for example, Lacroix, quite easily. By the way, the money on that screen is not quite right because again, so I've got like 0.7 in the bank or 0.8 in the bank or something with that team because obviously it's the price changes. Yeah, you're on mute, Rich. By the way,
Idiot. Yeah, no, the prices would have gone up, wouldn't they, on a whole bunch of these players? So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like 0.8 or something like that. So, I mean, it's a tricky one because I'd be kind of that's one thing that I've looked at as a variation is with that exact same team. I could have Watkins and bet on those fixtures and him being a bit more fresh and just kind of Villa, doing something, which I kind of do expect. But then I would have, say, Lacroix for Van Dijk, and what I would want to do there is I'd be basically booking in a transfer, something like Munoz to Gabriel, or Munoz to a Cucurella or Van Dijk or whatever in kind of game week 7 to 9, one of those sort of fixtures because I want that price point and want that kind of defender. So I'm booking in a transfer with that, which I don't really like all that much. And actually, I think I can't remember on the variations of it, but I think if that was Watkins and that was Lacroix, I don't actually think I have quite enough to do Munoz. I think I'm like 0.2 off at the moment, unless we get more price rises in the international break, like Grealish rising again, João Pedro rising again, or something like that, or Watkins even dropping again. I'd need to get something to. But then the more you look at it, so I did quite like that because that gives me Watkins, and it gives me one of those as kind of really good attackers that I'm losing with the fixtures. I'm obviously I could have Wirtz, but I've sort of decided against it because I just think Semenyo is just a really good long-term pick.
Yeah.
And again, otherwise you're kind of booking in transfers. So on the assumption that I do go for Semenyo, because I really like Semenyo, maybe we will talk about him again in a second, but he just looks like he's, I don't know, he looks like he's gone up a level to me. So yeah, so do you see what I mean? So basically, if I look at that, I mean, Senesi, I think is pretty much nailed for me again. I mean, look at his 4.5. I've got him on the wildcard at 4.5. He's 4.6 now. He just looks like Bournemouth look amazing. His DEFCON's amazing. His attacking threat is amazing anyway as a player. What did he get, like 5 goals and 4 assists last season or something? Or the season before, whenever it was, when he was playing more regularly. Season before, maybe. With the DEFCON, he just looks pretty much nailed to me. So does a 4.0. And Anderson also is pretty much nailed for the DEFCON reasons and the fixtures. The rotations look good anyway with these guys. I'll definitely have a Palace defender, probably Munoz, either just Munoz or Munoz and Lacroix. What I mentioned there, sorry, about if I had Watkins, I wouldn't have enough to do Munoz to a Gabriel. Would mean maybe something like a Raya down to a Sanchez, which I don't really mind either. Like I am a little bit stuck on the Raya versus Sanchez, for example, because Chelsea are just a bit like João Pedro. They just keep getting clean sheets. The numbers aren't there, but they've got the players, whatever. And Sanchez does look a little bit better for bonus and saves, whereas Arsenal's defense looks more solid and the fixtures are very good. But I don't think there's all that much in it for 0.5. One of the potential issues with having a Sanchez is if you do have Pedro and Palmer, you can't go to Cucurella. And maybe in game week 9, we do really want to go to Cucurella, or maybe that's a really nice move when they've got Sunderland at home and then some really good fixtures. That would obviously rule that out, which is only a minor thing. I do quite like Raya, even though I hate him because of last season. I kind of quite like it because not many people own him unless they're on wildcard. He is on paper the best keeper. They do have great fixtures. They've got an unbelievable defense. They've now got Mosquera to cover Saliba, who looks like he's injured for a bit, and he looked really good the other day. So they do have more cover, and they've got more cover in defensive midfield and stuff, and they just look extra defensive at the moment, Arsenal. And also is kind of having that Arsenal defense, because if I don't have Gabriel, I mean, because that is the thing, is to think of them in pairs, because Gabriel doesn't look like at the moment, or from what we've seen historically, as a DEFCON player. And that is significant. It's really significant in terms of what he is relative to the other defenders. Right? Because last season he was way ahead of them because Arsenal were way ahead of everyone, and he had some goal threat. And now a lot of defenders have got 1.5 points on him, 2 points on him per game. And one of those is potentially Van Dijk. And that is an interesting dynamic. It's really interesting because I've never really trusted, and I'll do what I ask Jossy in a minute when I've finished this ramble about Liverpool's defence, because I never really trust Liverpool's defence, even though I don't know why. I mean, I know that they've got a great defence and I know that he's a great pick, but it just kind of, whereas Arsenal feel like a team that feel comfortable and cosy, and I'm just going to bed at night and sleeping like a baby. Liverpool just feel like it's Alisson, who is absolutely ridiculously incredible, and Van Dijk, who's absolutely ridiculously incredible. And that's the reason, if they get clean sheets, that's the reason, is what it feels like. And so it always feels a little bit, not just that. I know that's hyperbole, Jossy. I'm not just saying that. I know they've got.
No.
I know that's exaggerating. But, it feels a little bit more down to the individuals. I don't know.
Yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, although having said that, Kirk looks an upgrade defensively. He looks like quite a defensive player. I mean, he looks an upgrade anyway on Robertson, and obviously you've got Soboslai playing right back at the moment, who's just a very clever and sensible player, and that looks pretty tidy as well. And obviously you hope Konate stays fit. So, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Van Dijk is the one with DEFCON. And it's a huge thing, isn't it, to get the Liverpool. So you've got, you talk about the Arsenal centre-back or the Liverpool centre-back. The Liverpool centre-back is a guy who looks like he gets DEFCON. He does things single-handedly. He's getting 14, 15 DEFCON regularly. And he does have some goal threat. So whilst I've never really liked Van Dijk as a pick, and I've kind of always much more warmed to Gabriel and his goal threat and his sort of how solid he is. Sweet Rich is going to loot. Yeah. Virgil, having Raya and Virgil does look decent, and I do quite like that kind of flexibility that it offers in not booking a transfer necessarily with the defence and having that price point in Van Dijk. My issue, really, that I'm rambling on about is the kind of Watkins versus João Pedro, and I know that part of me is like emotionally holding on a little bit to Watkins, and it's a bit of a loss aversion. I do know that, but I also, something's telling me that, and I also know or think that objectively Watkins for the next 3 or 4 is better than João Pedro. but João Pedro is the one who just keeps scoring, and do you know what I mean? The minutes look better, the freshness looks better, etc., etc. And João Pedro is possibly / probably not on penalties, like we might have thought.
Probably not.
No.
Watkins hasn't become a bad pick overnight, and I just recall we did this. I think was it last season where few of us were jumping off Watkins because he'd gone through a little slow patch and then he just started delivering. And he's got the fixtures there to do it.
He did.
So I get that.
Last season he blanked the first 3 games. Then they had the international break, and then he came back, and I think he braced and then scored and assisted.
Yeah.
So, something ridiculous like that. And this is why I don't understand the Villa thing entirely. Like, why are they so low on? Why they all of a sudden seem to drop so far on, for example, 11-5's team model? Why have the bookies got them that low? I mean, and the other thing is obviously they have just signed Sancho and Elliot. And Elliot is a player that Elliot is a player where, in terms of information, that is really interesting. I mean, the price point allows you. I think he's 5.4. The price point allows you to go there from anyone. But he is definitely a really exciting pick because I've just mentioned the fixtures: Everton, Sunderland, Burnley, Fulham in the next 4, and we know how good Harvey Elliott is and can be. And I want to inspect the predicted team news. I expect him to start straight away. I think he's, you can tell us again, Jossy, in a second, that he's had a pre-season Liverpool. He has had some minutes, and et cetera, et cetera. And he obviously had the under-21s as well with England. But he is potentially an incredible pick there at 5.4 as well.
Yeah,
and does he make Rodgers and Watkins a lot better? I mean, I'm not convinced by Sancho at all, but that's another conversation. But yeah, go on.
I was just going to comment on Villa. I mean, they're missing Kamara, they're missing Onana. I mean, is that hitting the midfield? They relied a lot on Kamara, I think, last year. You do notice when he's not there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is, I mean, that's, let me just get up what the predicted team was for last week. Because this, I mean, that's obviously, I mean, they've got Tielemans, haven't they? Still. Okay.
Yeah. And they were starting with Tielemans in a 10. And I mean, I've not seen the games, but I understand it's not really getting the best out of him playing him in a 10.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, Kamara and Onana. I mean, if they're still out, are they long-term injuries or?
They're 50% on FPL. I don't know any.
Yeah, so that is significant, and that might be the sort of thing that does tip me over and just sort of saying it is very hard in this situation to lose someone like Watkins, and I don't have to, as I say, with that team. I can make changes, but keeping him feels like a big bet. It feels emotional if you're making a big bet, because if I shape my team in any way, much around. I mean, it's not as straightforward as that, by the way, because initially why I was going to keep Watkins in is he is a more effective cash cow for Palmer. And that is quite significant in terms of if I had Gyökeres, Watkins, and Strand Larsen, there's many more options for me to go Watkins down to, you know, a 4.4 after playing bench boost, and a Semenyo or a Paqueta to Palmer.
Yeah.
But then what happens with that? Sorry to just bore you with so much with this, but you know what happens with that is it then is very hard to see João Pedro finding a way into my team at any point before game week 20, or, you know what I mean, something stupid, because there isn't the money there to get Palmer and João Pedro and this and that, and I just it is go on, Rich. It's tough. It's tough to decide on that spot.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought up Palmer, because it would be remiss of me not to talk about two players, and he was the first one that I wanted to talk about, because we've known each other for long enough by now that I know you won't be happy if other people got to Palmer for a few hauls before you were even able to get there. So I think you've answered that question as to whether you're still listening. I mean, if he was available for this weekend, would it change your lineup at all?
Well, that's the thing. You know, I need to prepare
We've heard
myself.
nothing. Have we heard nothing?
We've heard nothing. But the thing is that, you know, what are we going to hear? We'd have to. I don't know how honest he's been historically. I think he's been all right, the manager.
He's all right.
But, you know, him saying, "Oh, he's okay," you know, he can play a part, or he's fine, or, you know, something. It worries me. It doesn't sound like enough. I want to see something that is like, no, he's Cole is fine. He's had a good rest. He's raring to go. You know, he's 100%. That's going to be like, shit, what am I going to do here? Because that's actually really, really then difficult, especially when you spent a week or a week and a half thinking about these players. Because, and it's even more appealing, isn't it? Because how many people will have Palmer next week? Yeah, not a lot. And it always worries me when someone's had this kind of injury. Like, what does it mean? I need to hear something really positive, because what if it just pulls up again? Or why was it niggling at him for a bit before that warm-up when he came out? You know, it's... And then that's also a huge bet to make on wildcard, because if I went Palmer, can you imagine how many changes I have to make to get Palmer in? And then what if he's not 100%, or he pulls up injured again? So these are the things where, in terms of some specific players and information and when's the right time to wildcard, these are specifics are a problem. A couple of players with specific fixtures, and absolute Palmer. That is like an all or nothing, isn't it? A Palmer wildcard is literally an all or nothing. Because I'm also I also feel really, you know, irrationally good about Semenyo, and I can't see how you make a team work with Palmer and Salah and Fernandes and Semenyo and Gyökeres.
No. I mean, if Palmer was to come in, who's dropping out of the midfield?
Well, I haven't looked at it. Well, I have looked at it, but I've only looked at it in the sense that it pretty much has to be Semenyo.
Yeah,
comes out
in terms of budget,
because I can't rationalise not having someone like Fernandes long term at the moment, because he just looks too good as an all-round fantasy football pick. And obviously Salah. And I think, and you know, people like Gyökeres and stuff, like you don't want to not be on that for what he can do and what he's you know, he's potentially offering. So it is very, very, very difficult, because it's easy to forget what Palmer is, isn't it? And like what he can do, and that is. And again, I could look at it. I haven't looked at it enough, because then there's a discussion of maybe you do go a little bit more all out. Maybe you sort of opt for the kind of 4 defenders that are 4.5s that are very good at DEFCON, and they're probably all very good defenders generally. And you don't have that price point of a Van Dijk or a Gabriel or any of those guys, and maybe you can stretch to it for a Paqueta, and maybe that is a fine play. In fact, just thinking about it, I was looking at Fabio Borges' team yesterday, what he started the season with. I think he started the season something like that. So there's, you know, in terms of a rationale for it, I think he started the season with Salah, Palmer, Saka, Fernandes, and just a load of 4.5s. So actually, what I just said there is actually what someone else has already done as well.
Oh,
so
yeah, I wanted to... Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to come to that next with, well, basically Salah and Haaland, and whether there was a plan to move one or to the other, or indeed whether you can foresee yourself coming off Salah when the next couple of fixtures have run dry? Because I know that conversation will be much more popular when it's soon as to whether people come off of Salah. So I wondered if you had any kind of projective thoughts about that, or it was just a wait and see.
It's kind of a wait and see, because I've thought of it to the extent that I'll probably free hit in 6, which covers Burnley at home anyway, because I don't plan to transfer him in then. So the free hit is heavily about which defenders you've got, because the midfield looks okay for most people, and it's about whether you want a free hit into Haaland captain kind of thing, and how significant that looks, because I think Salah plays Palace away or something, which is a bit of a stinker for him. And then getting, planning to or trying to pick a team such that I get to game week 13 when the fixture swings, that hopefully I have at least 3 transfers, 4 or 5 transfers. And if you've got 4 or 5 transfers, you can choose what you want to do with Haaland at that point. But I still, with that in mind, so with 6 covered and with hopefully lots of transfers and 13 covered, I still lean, rightly or wrongly, quite heavily to Salah over Haaland. City haven't looked great so far. Haaland is undoubtedly a fantastic pick, and things are going through him, and he is going to score consistent goals. First of all, we touched on it already. Penalties and the bonus does take a little bit off him, but Haaland has to do so much. Yeah. Haaland has to do so much. What was it last season? I think Haaland had 181 points, and what did Salah have? 364 or something.
Huge gap, yeah.
Think about that. I know that Salah's not going to do what he did last season, but 181 to 364. There has to be a huge swing in what the two players offer. And we're still seeing from Salah that he's the one who's going to play 90 minutes every game for another season. He always gets that last bit of the game where that's when he scores and assists, because he gets that freedom and he's on that last man, and he's still got the legs because he's fitter than everyone else. All this sort of stuff before, Ramadan comes and all that. It takes an awful lot. So I'm still in the sort of camp of like, Haaland's there. I want to build towards some transfers just in case things drastically change, but I don't really expect them to. And I still don't think it's worth having both in the same team, because the value comes from captaincy and there are too many other good picks. So that's where I'm at.
And the one final name, I'm gonna put a few slurs from the chat your way in a minute, Danny, just for your interest as much as anything else. But the final one that would have been so popular if anyone else was wildcarding this week, I should imagine, would be Mateta. Was he not greatly considered?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Mateta needs to be spoken about, yeah, because that's what I've forgotten. So obviously he's been in my thoughts, and obviously he's optimal and that kind of stuff. And I've obviously, like I say, I've been on Watkins a lot, and Mateta's it's fine and it's great on paper, but it is quite front heavy. He's not someone. It's a little bit of a booked transfer, which is fine. Again, if you make it so that he's your cash cow for Palmer or something like that, it's fine. But you've got Sunderland at home, which is it's after an international break, and it's the Palace injuries. Mateta hasn't really had anything numbers wise, non-pen XG, I don't think, this season really. Or not that I can think of. I know he had the penalty. He's not really had many chances, really. I just think it's a big blow to Palace's attack. So Palace are a system team that they don't have much depth. They have 11 players that he's managed to get working so well together. They know everything they're doing together, so they function really well when those 11 players. You've taken Eze out, you've taken Sarr out, and you've taken Wharton out of the attack. And that's a huge core of the team gone. So now you basically see that team, and more does drop on Mateta. It is better for his minutes. We do know he's got penalties, so it's still a good pick. But you just sort of see Palace, and you see sort of Munoz out here, and you just see Mateta, and it worries me a little bit in terms of the team attack. I still think he looks great this week. I just think in terms of a long-term pick, it's kind of like, would I rather have João Pedro and just leave him there because he's a guy looks like the sort of guy you just leave there for the rest of the season? Or would I rather have Watkins and bet on Everton, Burnley, Sunderland, Fulham at home, whatever it is, seriously good fixtures for a while? So I'm not too bothered about not having Mateta if I don't go there. He doesn't terrify me, rightly or wrongly. Did just have a quick look as well. Just again, it's a ridiculously small sample that means absolutely nothing. But I just had a little look at the defensive numbers and didn't realise that. I know Sunderland have had good fixtures, but they're actually 4th best from the 3 games for minutes per expected goals conceded,
Wow.
ahead of Bournemouth and Liverpool. Burnley bottom, by the way, which is even more terrifying for this weekend. So yeah, I think I was going to say something before you were going to throw the slurs at me, but yeah, I was going to say was like, by the way, you know, in terms of these teams and especially the sort of Watkins and Strand Larsen and the kind of Paqueta and Semenyo makeup is that it does rotate really well. Like it rotates really well. I mean, another reason, for example, like you look at Everton attackers, if I was to pair, Everton don't rotate very well with City, for example. And some of the other guys, you know, so that it kind of works nicely here that we don't expect Strand Larsen to play. I'm trying to think if I took any screenshots. I think I took some, so I can sort of give you an idea. But this sort of thing, let's say Strand Larsen is okay by the week after, you can bench Reinders against Arsenal away. Strand Larsen's got Leeds at home. This is all while, say, for example, Watkins or João Pedro, João Pedro's just going to play anyway. Watkins has got great fixtures. The following week, Paqueta has Arsenal away. When you've still got Strand Larsen with Brighton at home, Watkins, if you have him, Burnley at home. Sorry, this is week 7, assuming free hit. Then you've got Semenyo, Fulham at home. Yeah, so again, so it makes Paqueta's the one you want to bench there. Yeah, so and then the following week, I mean, this is also, sorry, I should say, I probably bench boost game week 8. Which is another reason why, because if I didn't, so it is a little bit annoying as well. So if I didn't have bench boost, then it'd be much easier for me to just not have a third striker, for example, and just put a bit more money into the 11 and play around with it a bit more. But I don't really want to do that anyway because there's a lot of rotation is required, and I really like Strand Larsen, for example, and all that sort of pick to rotate. But I don't really want to bench boost the 3 players. I think that's a bit much, you know, for that kind of thing. And game week 8, I just think when else are you going to get the Burnley Leeds are playing each other? So on paper, it's just, I know it could be 1-1 and you just get nothing from it, but on paper, it's just, you're not going to get, everyone's going to have Dubravka all season as the 4.0. You know, so who do you want Dubravka playing? You want him playing Sunderland or Leeds? Well, that week he is playing Leeds and Leeds are playing Burnley. So it just looks like just put it there and leave it there. So it also works quite well for that because you've still got Strand Larsen with Sunderland away. You've got Paqueta with Brentford at home. You've got Semenyo with Palace. You know, so it does look nice on paper in terms of rotation and stuff. These sort of formats of teams. It's just again and again. Doesn't have fucking Wirtz or a Liverpool attacker this week who are gonna screw me. It doesn't have potentially. Does it have Watkins? That's going to screw me. What before the slurs? I mean, what are your thoughts on, for example, Watkins and rolling with that for the next 4 and those fixtures instead of João Pedro, and therefore not having Van Dijk and say having a Lacroix or someone cheaper and not having that price point in the defense of another sort of 6.0.
Yeah, I think first of all, I mean, you certainly can justify it because the fixtures just about favour you there. I think it's fair to say that you wouldn't be. It's not like you would be booking in transfers as a result. Is that fair?
I mean, you kind of booking in transfers all the way. I don't play to book in transfers, but you know, you do naturally have to look at there's some big shifts in fixtures, isn't there now? And then obviously in 13 and 9, and there is the 9 thing with Palmer. I mean, Palmer's the big reason why everyone's basically got booking transfers, unless which is pretty mad. If he's just absolutely, you know, past 100% this week, do you just get him on wildcard? But because of Palmer, everybody's booking in transfers. With the Watkins thing, it's a cash cow to Palmer, so that's a booked in transfer. And you would like to. That's the thing with double Palace defense is I don't want to. That's a booked transfer in defense because I don't want to carry double Palace defense for ages because the fixtures don't really allow it. But you could keep Lacroix because of the DEFCON and sell Munoz. Whereas this team doesn't really require the book transfer in defence, but you've got more money in defence that maybe isn't wholly necessary. I do quite like just having Munoz for this week. It's a bit too high ceiling.
No, that's right. I mean, for whether this logic is correct or not, but I would always be more worried about Munoz than I would Mateta, even though I know in my heart of hearts that that's probably not a realistic matchup there. But I've just always been more worried about Munoz personally. Simple answer is if I was deciding between the options that you've got on your screen and the one that you're deliberating over, I would go with the one that you've already got on the screen. And that's just simply because, unfortunately, we like making a bet based on what we hope that Aston Villa would do, as opposed to the one that we've seen already.
Yeah,
and I would go with the one where I've seen the evidence of it already. I have to bet in my particular situation that they will come good, but it's not looking great, is it?
I completely agree. But then it's just like, how good do they have to be though when you play Sunderland and Burnley? You don't have to be very good.
Not with Burnley, no. Yeah,
True.
yeah.
But you've got a decent Chelsea team, and João Pedro is doing the business for them, leading the line, and he's heavily owned. He was one of the first names on my wildcard last week because I just felt like he was going to punish me every week at the moment.
No, totally. It is one of these things, every season. I mean, God, go back to the Danny Ings season. I think that was my worst ever nightmare of a season when I had some big learning curves. But, Danny Ings never owned him all season, just pummels you every season. And then Chris Wood last season. And you get these strikers sometimes, don't you? They just seem to do it. Because it is interesting. It's interesting from an emotional point of view, because it is easier for you to look at it, Rich, obviously detached. And also you now have that. You have the joy of having had 9 points from João Pedro now, and he's already delivered for you. And
they were very, very tasty. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet they were. Yeah, twats. So it is interesting. There's undoubtedly psychology at play when you've had to sort of wildcard and you've no longer got Wirtz, and then you've not got Watkins either. It's not great. But you have to just think long term, and I have to decide, and I will, and I'm completely fine about that. But I have to be very confident in what is long term the better strategy. And with João Pedro, he would definitely be in for me anyway, and he possibly will be. It is just the minutes thing, because the minutes are intense, and I don't know really what to make of it. Like, it is mad. La Paz tonight, it's intense. But you can also see him as the type of guy who's like, nah, boss, I feel fine. Get me on, fine. And that's okay. And you can see him being good for like 50, 60 minutes, and then maybe he tires, but you can see him insisting on playing.
My sources have it that he likes to raw dog economy flights on the way home from South America without films. He just doesn't give a shit. He will do it. He will eat nuts on those planes, even if there is someone with an allergy. He just doesn't care. He'll be doing it. So, I think honestly though, he does. He already looks like he's just very at home there, doesn't he? I do think owners have got pretty fortunate. I still think that with returns, no doubt about that whatsoever. You have been unlucky not owning him. I mean, we were obviously I only owned for that last week. But yeah, if I had to make a call on it, I would sit on your side of the fence. Really, I think it's also you can't underestimate the having Virgil this week when a lot of people have not wild carded yet, and they started the season with him, and they thought they were going to start the season with him and didn't go there. He himself has a very high ceiling for this fixture in particular. I could easily see him.
Yeah.
Talk to me about it, Jossy, because I know Richie was out the room, but we didn't get onto Liverpool defence. Like, talk to me about Liverpool and Virg.
Yeah, I mean, again, he was one that I had in my game week 1 team all pre-season. It just fell by the wayside. I suppose Community Shield and some of the pre-season didn't help. It does feel that we're a lot more open at the moment. Liverpool fans in general, we're not overly confident about keeping clean sheets, I'll be honest. But I do feel that'll settle down as well. We've got quite a few new players in the back line. Kirkes, I mean, you touched on it, he's probably an upgrade, and I think he will be. But he has looked exposed at times. Soboslai's been fantastic at right back. And So if he's going to carry on there, Conor Bradley, if he's up to speed now, we know that he's solid. Probably more so than Trent was, to be fair. So it does feel like we've been very open. Konate hasn't showered himself in glory in the first couple of games, but I think it's also important to say that Bournemouth, I think we all underestimated Bournemouth and how strong they were going to be, having lost a few players in the summer. Maybe Kluivert was out as well. They were really good. And we've played Newcastle and we've played Arsenal. So it's probably difficult to benchmark how the Liverpool defence has at least returned at the moment. We'll get that right. And yeah, I'm sure we will be a lot more solid. Everything you've said so far, Virgil's absolutely killing it in DEFCON, which is a surprise because I expect us to be a little bit more solid that he doesn't need to kill it in DEFCON. But I suppose you've got the best of both worlds there. That when we need to, he will be very involved in dominating that defence.
This is it. This is why I was saying it does feel a bit down to the individuals. It's all you see. I mean, there's no, in terms of Liverpool clean sheets, so much of it as well does for me just go down to Alisson as well. Like you have to get through that defence and then you have to score past Alisson. I mean, he is the best keeper in the world in my opinion, and has been for a long time. And that does give you some confidence because you always think he can easily go through 90 minutes without someone getting past Alisson. You know what I mean? It's like, and Van Dijk. But like you say,
that's it. And so often rival fans say, "Oh, we've been jammy," but no, he's that good. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, because like I say, seasons gone by, that would be Gabriel, and it's possibly still the right thing to do to go Gabriel. But I just think logic tells you in terms of, the DEFCONs and that slight shift in points that this would be more logical.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm nervous about the Arsenal defence and whether or not that the Arsenal defence is not top draw, but doesn't look like they're going to deliver anything in terms of DEFCON. So they have lost some of that margin because they were, particularly when they were a little bit cheaper, they were comfortably the best defensive options. And I'm not sure if it's comfortable anymore. And there's some great 5 million, 5.5 million, even some of the 4.5s that at the moment, at least, are delivering pretty consistent numbers, even if they're not cleaning. It's tricky.
Richie, you want to hit me with some stuff? I know. And
I was actually just going to say one quick. I mean, this is a very, very 1% marginal point, but about Arsenal defense as well. But they have got a lot of options there now as well. I know it will only happen once or twice a season, but with is it Hincapi? I'm probably butchered that pronunciation, Mascara, etc. They have upgraded their backups there. It does make me think at some point, and of course Saliba's out as well. We don't quite know. Probably won't have a huge impact, will it? Just because they're such a good team for this kind of thing. But that might play into a little thought process as well. But basically, Danny, all I was going to say is because I know that you're the man to go to for this, but I did look at the chat in horror as a number of people threw some shapes in Palmer's direction earlier on this evening, and I'll just read out. Harry Dawson, I don't know whether you're just trying to wind Danny up, and I'm sure Danny can turn the other cheek. Palmer hasn't been right for a little while now. He can't even run at 80%. Personally, I think Enzo is a better pick. And then Eno helped him out with the pylon. With what he's delivering, Palmer should be 8 million.
Don't push me.
Okay, right.
Don't
there we go. There wasn't a face-off, no beef here. Just very quickly, I have seen the England team again. Madueke being played ahead of Jared Bowen. I mean, honestly, I don't understand how anyone could even think that was an acceptable decision. But there we go. Any last comments on the wildcard? I do think it looks good, though, Denny. I think it is a difficult week to pull it off, and
I think I'm just going to.
It is nicely balanced. It's got some great players that none of us can spare the transfers for. We all want to buy Senesi. We've all missed the boat on Semenyo.
No, but this is it, Rich. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, and it's true. But unfortunately, it's the players that I don't have this week that is what I want, and that's what you guys have all got. Your Wirtzes and Watkins and people like that. So unfortunately, it does feel like I'm going to continue to fall, is what it feels like. But I didn't. My team was a mess, and I'm fine with the fact that you never know what will happen. You never know what will happen this week. Maybe it'll work out. It is, as it's difficult, isn't it, with people like Paqueta, I mean...
Do you know what? I didn't really get around to this, but there is one player I just want to... Because I should imagine a few people, if they were wildcarding this week, might have gone cool on Reinders. Is there any flickering there?
No, yeah, I can understand that. I just think it's the value for money. I just think the minutes keep getting higher and higher because, I mean... didn't you just mention someone else who's injured now, or someone? Oh yeah, Marmoush has just gone off.
Kirky's out. Marmoush is out.
Marmoush, Kirky's out, and there's
Rodri's playing again, so that's helpful.
Rodri's playing again. Yeah, Foden's been in a nightclub since like February. I mean, I still think that he's just going to offer really good value. I still think he's just a bit of a poacher type, and it's an interesting one, but I just think the value is still there in a City player when they come good. I mean, he's the sort of player who could brace. He's the sort of player who could even hat trick. So it doesn't take much. It's just about thinking about the alternatives, and there aren't a huge number. And I think I'd probably look at Paquetá more, even, to be honest, than Reinders as potentially playing around with it. And as I say, the players that I don't have there, I mean, Harvey Elliott, I think, is a very interesting that you could given that he's so cheap, you could just have some fun and just go on Harvey Elliott, and just go for it, because I think he's going to be very good and they've got very good fixtures. And Njai, as I say, is Njai. If it was wildcarding in 4 weeks' time, Njai would probably be in it, but I'm not. And as much as you love the player and you want him, like I said, I think it's like, what is it, Villa away, and it's like City, Liverpool, and something. It's not a nice set of fixtures.
Yeah, you mentioned a few players that I just reminded myself that this is a week old now, to be fair, but you get the point with some of these projections that have changed for goals and assists for the whole season. I won't read the whole thing out, so it is worth looking at the visuals or going to RobT's account if you want to for player projections over the course of the year. Very pleasing to see Bruno in the top 4 there still. So you've got and of course, Isak has now made his an appearance at number 5 on that list with Eze, which is very high, I think, but we'll see about that. The Newcastle strikers both in the top 20 because they're obviously hedging. They don't know who's going to be starting more or whether they're going to be starting together. So some interesting ones there. Elliot, as you say, could easily be someone who jumps from number 60 right to sort of number 20 or something if all goes well. So some interesting picks there. Anything jump out at you there? I don't want to make a huge feature of this by any means because I know we're pretty much done. But
no, it's fine. I was just thinking, given your last comments, it would have been better if you'd have. I seem to have a slightly more updated one. Maybe, I don't know, but it's got. Palmer
maybe.
So Palmer is 4th for what anyone wants to carry. Is basically exactly the same as Gyökeres there, 21. So between Gyökeres and Fernandes, but not that you would expect him to be anywhere else. I mean, Isak's obviously going to get interesting. When you're talking about planning transfers, that's like, it's going to get wild in a few weeks. It's going to get wild because we have to expect it to. And he is obviously much more manageable at 10 million than 14 million. And it may well be that via one route or another, even obviously the extreme case of it being at the expense of Salah, but via one route or another, you would expect Isak to be the one that changes. That either means that nobody ever needs Haaland for the rest of the season, or maybe Haaland and Isak becomes the player. I can't really see it, but I do think Isak will become. It's very difficult to imagine a world where Isak isn't just banging regularly for Liverpool, and I do expect him to get very good minutes, and I do expect him to basically start every game unless he's knackered, because that's just what you do when you pay 140 million for one of the world's best strikers. So that's going to get interesting, isn't it?
I was tempted briefly to try and do something with banging regularly, but I thought there's nothing I can say here that will land us in trouble. But when we do sign off, if you have an evening of banging regularly, then good for you. We're unfortunately middle-aged, and those days are gone. But yeah, thank you very much. I think I'll take that down. Just before we sort of wrap up, Jossy, I mean, does any of that help with the free hit? I don't know if anything is crystallised as a result of Danny's wildcard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very different decision process, isn't it? I'm looking at the 1 week fixation. I'm relatively settled with the structure, and I feel like I still need to attack Palace, attack Liverpool. It's just maybe about ear to the ground, out team news, and trying to be comfortable with the minutes. I think Danny, you did make me think whether Wirtz is a better pick than Gakpo. I think even if both start, you're right, Gakpo's liable to come off sooner. Gakpo is possibly more liable to be involved in the forward play. He did have a much better game against Arsenal. But I think obviously Burnley's going to be it's going to be a better game for him. He's going to have a little.
Yeah. It just depends what you think on the minutes there, because you know better than me. And I think you're right. I think he is more of the goal scorer. And I mean, to be honest, I've not been very impressed with Gakpo as a player for a while. And I think what he does do is score. He does then have some end product. So it is just a case of what you think on the minutes.
I think Wirtz will win on the minutes.
What's the just last thing? But what's the international? Vissa could be an interesting shout. To be fair, maybe talk about that in a second. But what's the deal with the international minutes for Gakpo, if any? I mean, Wirtz has been playing, but it looks like has Wirtz just played like easy home games with Germany? I don't know. So he's probably just chilling. He's probably fine.
Yeah,
but, it's just those sort of things. Obviously, you're gonna have to just factor in and just decide on the minutes. I'm probably not the right person as well, because I'm obviously convinced that Wirtz will bang now because I don't own him, and I just think he's a great pick anyway. But
yeah, Gakpo played 90 the other night. Sunday played 90 away at Lithuania, so we'll keep an eye.
There's a round of games tonight on there, and another round tomorrow, probably. So yeah, I assume they're involved. Yeah.
Vissa is definitely an interesting shout, because Eddie Howe is one of those guys, isn't he? That does sort of he's not cautious. He doesn't mess around. If he thinks someone's fine, he just puts them in. He's a pretty pragmatic guy. You know what I mean? There she is, heard her. He did play 70 minutes the other night for international. Someone just said, and he scored and assisted or something. Hey, I have seen.
Oh my god! Honestly, if you are listening on audio, just switch to YouTube for the last 5 minutes. Oh my god!
You're on mute, Jossy.
That
cat is.
He knows he's on mute. He knows he's on mute.
That was on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it already, but Newcastle is the most exciting fixture in terms of free hit, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Wolves, the other thing, just to say, I know I didn't say this before because I don't know if it's obvious, but we've literally heard from the Wolves manager say he made some comment like 2 weeks ago, didn't he? Like something about defending. And he was like, I don't do that with my team. Like, that's not how we want to play. We're not going to sit back. Like, we're just going to attack. Like, he made a comment like, we're just not going to sit back. That's not how I play. And obviously that was just ears pricking up to me. And we've seen it anyway in terms of how they've approached games. But if you ever talking about captaincy or looking for a haul, the haul or captaincy looks to be Wolves as one of maybe three.
And we know Newcastle are a team who can put 4 and 5 past when they're up for it.
Yeah, and they're going to be. It's going to be raucous. They're going to be pissed off about, and they're going to be they're going to want to show Isak, what he's left.
I mean, Gordon would have been one of your first names on the team sheet this week.
Absolutely.
Realistically, it's really annoying because I think a lot of us would have brought him in anyway. But that's a shame. But
if we had any confidence Barnes plays, he would be a really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think we do.
No, because I just wondered when I looked at your team earlier whether there was something in bringing, Ekatite to Verts and then Visser, and there's something maybe there, but it's a risk of a different kind, is it? And then you miss out on Ekatito, who no one owns, really. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Brilliant. Okay, well, I suppose we should wrap up. This is good timing for us, Danny. Just over 2 hours.
I know. Yeah, I'm gonna have my dinner now at like a normal time. I'm not having a beer tonight. I'm being
That's
on
not a normal time.
It's early for me.
It is for you, yeah. No, I've got weird habits where I'm sort of finished eating by about 5 p.m. Which makes me the unusual one, to be fair. But yeah, no, thank you for your company again, Jossy. Lovely for you to come back. Hopefully you'll visit us again later in the season when you're
thanks for having us
in the top 1K wanker towards the end of the season or something like that. Eno's in the chat trying to make Danny think about Lyle Foster for Bench Boost 8. So that's something for you to go off and research, Danny, whilst you're eating your... What's for dinner, by the way?
It's not a bad shout. It's not a bad shout at all. It's just that John Larson's fixtures around that are pretty amazing. But it's fish and chips, actually. It's like a poshy fish and chips. Like not a takeaway, but I think we bought a nice piece of fish and some chips, and I've got like a little pot of homemade tartar sauce as well to have with it.
Nice. So, yes. No, I had that at the weekend, and it was absolutely delish. So yeah, good. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, well, we should wrap up. But yeah, whether you're on free hit or wildcard, I hope you found that useful. If you're just a sort of boring one transfer type like myself, then good luck to you as well. But have a good evening, and do click all the buttons and share if you can. That'd be very kind of you, if you don't mind. And do leave your chats on the kind of proper non-stream comments, and we'd love to hear from you and your different questions. Lots of things came into the chat tonight that I couldn't sort of raise for different reasons, but yeah, feel free to pop your questions in there and we'll try and get back to you as well. But yeah, thanks lads, and have a good evening all, and enjoy your weekend.
Cheers boys. Cheers Jossy.
Cheers guys.